Welcome to Forbidden Planet TV. I'm Andrew Sumner, and I'm here joined once again by the one and only Chip Zdarsky. Chip Zdarsky, that's you, mate. Live from Canada. How you doing?
That's me. Doing good. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks, mate. Very well
Cool.
indeed. We're here to talk about all things Daredevil because there is a collected edition of Daredevil Woman Without Fear
hmm
and also two hardcover editions of your Daredevil To Heaven Through Hell storyline, which is
Yeah.
Daredevil hardcover volume 2 and Daredevil volume 3, all available from the links attached to this conversation. So, all
Just
right.
as easy as that,
I
Andrew?
know, mate. I know.
Wow.
I know. We aim to please. Right
Yeah.
here, it's just a click of the button away from
Wow.
YouTube.
Just like that. Wow.
Just
Amazing.
like this, mate. Just like
The
this.
future. The
Absolutely.
future.
Right on. Yeah, absolutely. So mate, it's been a massive sort of big, overwhelming, mega narrative for you on Daredevil. But
Yeah.
what can you tell me about To Heaven Through Hell and about Woman Without Fear?
Um, yeah. So this is a weird volume in the sense that it collects issues 21 to 30 and are annual. Um, but the big secret revealed in it is that Elektra takes the mantle of Daredevil. Big secret because she's also on the cover as Daredevil. So it's so that part's a little weird. So this is basically Matt post kind of Inferno and the Battle of Hell's Kitchen, and basically paying for his crime that kicked off way back in issue 1, which is the inadvertent killing of a civilian, and he he goes to prison. I know he's gone to prison before, but this time he's going to prison as Daredevil, thanks to a lot of kind of legal shenanigans back in Charles Soule's run. Charles is an actual lawyer, so he wrote a lot of legal stuff in there. Whereas myself in this volume, I'm just like, yeah, here's a court case. Oh, he pleads guilty. We don't have to do the court case. Yeah, so this is kind of the beginning of Elektra's kind of journey as Daredevil, and Matt's journey as Daredevil within the prison system, and how that changes him. Um, so yeah, so this is a pretty big volume in terms of like what happens and how it sets up the future, including the Daredevil annual, which is all about another thing from Charles's run, which is Mike Murdock, Matt's official / unofficial twin brother.
Yeah.
Back in the early Daredevil days, like they'd run these like classic kind of Silver Age plots where Matt Murdock pretended to be his fake brother Mike Murdock, so he could
Yeah.
like you know trick people into thinking he's not Daredevil, and also be this kind of like weirdo. Uh, and yeah, Charles made that a bit more legitimate during his run, and I took it a step further in this run, and it all leads to kind of Devil's Reign, which is the event that's been going on at Marvel.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah,
And Mike Murdock, if I recall, certainly from my classic Daredevils, he's posing as his own sighted brother, right? That's the deal.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and like flamboyantly so too.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so he's actually a real character in Charles's run,
Yeah.
and I kind of pick up that ball because it's fun to write like a Matt Murdock who's maybe not as moral and
Yeah.
a little shiftier. So that's been a lot of fun.
He as a character, he always kind of struck me as the Daredevil equivalent of that Batman persona matches Malone, and
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, very similar.
yeah, kind of low life scumbag, slightly its own only vaguely related to the core persona.
Yeah.
So you've also got the chance to play around with Typhoid Mary and Bullseye, right, mate?
Yeah, and that was kind of always the plan. Like in my, I think issue 1 of Daredevil, I kind of seeded a Typhoid Mary as kind of the secret character throughout, and with this volume, we really delve into kind of her and Wilson Fisk's relationship, which has been, clearly very fractured over the years since her introduction. So that's been fun to kind of humanize both of those characters through kind of their mutual admiration for each other. And if you're writing Daredevil, you got to throw Bullseye in. At the end of issue 20, like, we definitely set up that Bullseye realized he needed to change, and we see the effects of that begin here. Yeah,
I think your take on Bullseye is interesting. How have you approached that character, given the fact that he's been so cool, he's been around for a while, but there are several iterations of him already before you got to him. Other people have a slightly different take on him, and how did you feel about approaching him?
Well, they do, and he kind of has this. He has the kind of similar problems to, say, like a Doctor Doom, where everyone wants to use him, everyone's got their take on him, and then he kind of becomes a little less special when he pops up all over the place and like isn't as dangerous as he could be. So that was kind of the challenge here, which was to set up in issues 19 and 20. Here's Bullseye. Oh wait, like, he's not as good as he could be, and then in our later storyline, fix that, kind of make him a bit scarier than he has been in the past few years. Yeah, and you can only hope as a writer that other people pick up on it and kind of go in that direction with the character. But for our run, like, we want him to be scarier than normal.
Yeah, which I think is a good take. I think I think that really works. One of the things that often sticks in my mind. Before I reveal what this thing is that sticks in my mind, I'm going to ask you a question, which is, what do you think of the Affleck Daredevil movie?
It has been a long time since I've seen it. I saw it in the theater, and I think that was it. And like, it's a little bit Phantom Menace to me, where like, as you're watching it for the first time in the theater, you're just like, you're so excited because it was Star Wars, and you're just like, oh wow, look at this lightsabers. I don't know about that part, but bye, I'm still excited. So it was kind of like that with the Daredevil movie. Like, I was just so overwhelmed with joy that there was a big screen version of it that I excused at the time, kind of a lot of the things that may have bothered me. And and since then I just haven't watched it again. So in my mind, it's just like, oh, it's a flawed movie that I was really excited to watch. And like Colin Farrell, he was the best part in it. Like that was really over the top and fun, and he knows how to have a good time in a comic book movie for sure.
And that's precisely where I was going, mate. You second guessed my school of thought spot on there, because he's this kind of outrageous pantomime villain in that movie. Mm-hmm. He's so eyeball rolling and over the top. The whole thing, when when he starts out killing an old lady on a transatlantic flight, all that stuff, but genuinely enjoying it all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely the most fun part of that movie.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. And in a way, I think that I remember in the Marvel books at the time, there was like an abortive, I think it was 2-part series written by Kevin Smith. I think Glenn Fabry was doing the art, but I think they only ever did the first issue of that. And that was very much influenced by that take on Bullseye.
Yeah, and they kind of, I remember later on, I think Ennis and Dylan did some Bullseye stuff as well that also kind of like went in that direction a bit more. I don't know. I like that take on the character. I think he should just be a bit more wild and deadly. Yeah,
because did you enjoy the Netflix series? Did you watch that?
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm eagerly waiting to see if they're going to do more. Now it's over at the parent company.
I mean, I thought that was a phenomenal series, and I think the only weak point about the series is, for me personally, is actually the portrayal of Bullseye, which is
okay.
I thought it was relatively much weaker in the show than that, but everything else about it. I mean, I think Charlie Cox is amazing. I think Fisk is really well portrayed, obviously. I mean, they obviously went less comic booky with Bullseye there, because the whole tone of the show was less comic booky in quotes. But I think it suits what they were doing with the show. I think if you put Colin Farrell in the Netflix show, they would have had some problems. I think you're
Yeah,
exactly right. I think the
yeah,
tone would have suffered somewhat. That is true. I love the
yeah.
brutality of the Netflix Daredevil, which is
Hmm.
that's a funny sentence to put together because I don't love brutality in real life, but in that fictional world of the way he
Sure.
actually is he's driven, I think it works really well.
Yeah, yeah. The fiction helps that. Yeah.
Now that you've been sort of battened down within the Daredevil universe for a
Mhm.
significant period of time, when you look back over your time on it, was was that narrative that sort of mega narrative that you created, is that something you always had within you that you wanted to express?
Yeah, I mean, almost all of it has been kind of figured out from the beginning. There are a few things that popped up that actually surprised me, and one was actually Elektra as Daredevil.
Yeah,
Like I always knew Matt was going to go to prison, um, uh, and all the steps that kind of brought him there, and I knew what was going to happen on the other end of it. Though it got a little bit bigger once it became a Marvel event. But the Elektra's Daredevil thing kind of happened. It was like a bolt out of the blue when I was at a Marvel retreat, and um, I was in my editor's office we are just on a break, and I think we were just talking about Elektra, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm having fun, like, because she just kind of showed up um, in issue 15 or whatever, and I think I had just written that. And I talked about having fun, and like my editor kind of made a joke about like, oh, we need someone to like, be Daredevil while Matt's in prison because or else we don't have a Daredevil book. I'm like, I kind of laughed, and I'm like, and it just hit me like, oh, Elektra, and all of a sudden like all the pieces just kind of like start to fall into place because it really worked with what her narrative was, and and provided something kind of fresh for the series. So almost everything, like I said, has been kind of planned from the beginning, but her as Daredevil really took it in a different direction.
I thought that was I thought as a long time Daredevil fan of that universe, I just thought that was such a great turn of events and such a great thing to have happen. I mean,
Oh,
it was a
thanks.
surprise, but it was deeply satisfying at the same time.
I mean, I think I said this maybe last time we talked, but like I fought so hard to make sure that was a secret. Like that they didn't tease a new Daredevil, that there wasn't like, the standard Marvel silhouettes, like who is this? Because I just knew people would just have their own ideas and then they would get mad at whatever the reveal was. Um, but to just have it be the kind of thing where you're a standard Daredevil reader, you pick it up on the stand and you're reading, and all of a sudden you hit the page, it's like, oh, of course. Like um, yeah, I miss that as a reader,
Yeah,
like
of
we
course.
have everything's kind of spoiled online and months in advance. But as a kid, when you picked up a comic and by the end, it's like, oh, that leads is dead. Like what? Like,
Yeah.
there's no spoiling of things. So yeah, that was satisfying. It's a shame people don't quite get that with, these volumes, reading it in this format. But got to have something for the single issue users.
Of course, yeah, and I
Yeah.
think it's good to respect the single issue process. Before we
Yeah.
close out on this, Chip, something you touched upon is the Marvel retreats where
Mm.
your fellow creators, the editors go away and spitball what's going to happen over the next 6 months and next year
Yeah.
of Marvel. I was talking to Brevo a while ago. He's been involved in a ton of those things, obviously, but
Oh yeah.
and yeah, he's probably been to more than anybody else, I would have thought.
Probably. Yeah.
But something I was interested in talking to you about as a creator is, do you find those when you're in those meetings? How does it feel? Can it be trepidatious, or how do you emotionally respond to when you have an idea and people go, "Hey man, I don't think so," and the quorum is, "We're not going to do that," or similarly when you throw in an idea and it blows up and everybody loves it? How does all that feel?
It's weird because you kind of don't necessarily want it to blow up and everyone loves it.
Yeah,
Like you need people to push back and have questions on it.
yeah,
I find the worst moments in the room are when somebody pitches their story and they're just like, and this is what happens. Everyone goes, oh yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, that's great. All right, what's next? And they move on to the next person. That feels like death. That feels like, oh, you've written a passable story that isn't exciting enough to get people asking questions. And I've said a few times that my favorite pitch in my time since I've been there was Hickman coming in with his X-Men pitch.
yeah,
He'd attended a couple retreats before, um, but he never said what he was doing. He was just kind of there and like helping kind of people with their pitches and stuff. But then when he pitched that, we were all just like, well, what? But what does that mean for this? And what does that mean for that? And how can you do this? And what about this? And like everyone had a question. And it felt like most of the questions he would just point at that person and go, that's a book. What you just described is a new book. What you just described is a new book. And he'd have answers, and like there was a lot of discussion around it, which is kind of like, that's electrifying. That's how you know you've got something good. You know, I've experienced that a little bit, nowhere near the level of Hickman with that pitch, but like when I first pitched Daredevil, it was the only time I've ever actually been stressed in the room, and even then just a little bit, because it was because I'm pitching Daredevil as the joke guy, and like Mark Waid's in the room, Joe Quesada's in the room, like Charles is in the room, like Daredevil, you know, legends are in the room.
Alumni are all there,
yeah, and all of a sudden I'm pitching their favorite character and everyone else's favorite character. But basically what happened after I did that, there was a lot of discussion. Like everyone's just like, well, you can't do that. You can't have him kill a guy, and you can't have Spider-Man come in at the end and be the heavy, and you can't have him like popping pills at the beginning. Like there was all these like, there's pushback on a lot of things. I had to defend it. And there was kind of there was a split in the room where it felt like kind of the younger cohort of writers were all just like, yeah, do it. And the older were just like, no, you might damage the character.
Yeah.
And so I like that tension in the room, like having to defend your thesis. Basically, it's like you're going every time you go to one of these. It's like you're presenting your PhD, and all over again. So yeah, I like it when there's stuff like that happens in the room.
Yeah, it's like being in front of Kingsfield in The Paper Chase, which is the minute I said that, I realised it's a massively early 70s reference. So anybody who doesn't get that, look it up on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's that makes a lot of sense. When you went to your first one, did you find it the only thing I've been involved in some of these things within my own sphere of work, but going to the Marvel one feels to me a bit like being in the writer's room at Saturday Night Live, where you're in the place, right?
Yeah, that was super exciting, and it was under Axel Alonso, and he brought in a few new faces. So it was like, I remember it was myself, Donnie Cates, Matt Rosenberg, Kelly Thompson, Ed Brisson. Like we were the 5 new writers, first time retreats brought in, and all of us, like, I mean, there was certain ones of us were more nervous than others, and if I don't join in and like voice an opinion, they're going to feel like they shouldn't have invited me. So there's pressure to speak. But those rooms can get really like loud, and like people can be arguing or like getting their points out really quickly. And it's hard as the new person to be like, oh, wait, I've got an idea. Like you want to raise your hand, but like when, you know, Dan Slott's yelling across the table at Tom Brevoort or whatever, it's hard to get into the middle of it, right?
Yeah, right.
Because you also, there's a reverence there. Like I'm like, you know, I don't want to be the person to like no, actually, to Mark Waid. I mean, I do, but like most people don't. So yeah, there's definitely a weird amount of pressure in that first one, and you also have the thing in the back of your head like, I'm going to say all the things that need to change in this industry, in this company, and like things are going to change. And you say these things, and people are like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And then the next retreat, you're like, oh, nothing actually changes from retreat to retreat. Like you could have the same conversations over and over again. Sometimes you're in the room and there are the same conversations over and over again from retreat to retreat. And you're just like, and I'm so jaded now. I'm just like, oh, I can't. We're talking about this again. Oh God.
I mean, that's why you're lucky, right, mate, to be in the place that it seems to me you're in a pretty blessed position that you can work for both of the majors while creating all your own books at the same time. And that surely is the thing that allows you to get through that process. And, you know, and the fact that you've got your own things you can control, that must be the
and that's fun. And I don't know, like, you know, now that I am kind of doing kind of big things for both publishers, I don't know if either of them are going to want me at their retreats. Like, I don't know if you want the guy writing Batman to show up to your Marvel retreat.
We shall see, mate. And on that very note, I'd like you to come back. I'd love you to come back sometime in the nearest future and talk some more about Batman if you're up for it, mate.
Yeah, for sure.
But right now, thanks for talking about Daredevil. And it's 3 books we've been talking about. There's the Daredevil hardcovers of To Heaven Through Hell, Volume 1 and Volume 2, and Daredevil Woman Without Fear, the collected edition, all available from the links attached here. Chip, it's always great to talk to you, mate. I'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Same here. Take it easy, man.
If you're enjoying watching Forbidden Planet TV and you're enjoying watching us talk to the world's most interesting and accomplished filmmakers, authors, artists, musicians, creators, subscribe right here. See you soon.